Who knows what Jay-Z, J.K. Rowling, Bill Gates and Oprah Winfrey all have in common? Okay, I will tell you then. They have all overcome failure in one shape or form to go on to gain success in their respective careers. Welcome to My Perfect Failure. Join us as we delve into the world of our perfect failures. We will interview, explore, and discuss how our perfect failures can lead us to success. Join us and tune in.
Welcome everybody to another episode of My Perfect Failure. Today I'm super excited because I have another fantastic guest for you. So my guest today is a personal and professional coach based in East London. His knowledge of relationships was in many ways learnt the hard way after losing his mother as a teenager, who he describes as his compass, and experienced a challenging start to his professional life in the corporate world, where he often felt like a fish out of water. He has embarked on a journey of self-discovery, which ultimately led him to coaching. So a very, very, very warm welcome to My Perfect Failure, Nick Rion. How are you, Nick?
I'm very good, thank you, Paul.
Well, thank you for joining me today on My Perfect Failure. I had to apologise at the start because we had to reschedule this. I think I was unwell. I think I picked up a bad cold. So thank you for your flexibility.
No worries.
Okay, so for everybody listening, today we're going to cover, I think, a really relevant subject, which is the consequences of conflict that can happen in businesses. And I guess when the conflict happens, the effects that it can have on atmospheres, on relationships, on business performance can be pretty devastating. So I'm keen to get into sort of the nuts and bolts of and how that can, what the consequences are, but more importantly, the tools and tips that we can put in place to mitigate and resolve some of those challenges. What I'm keen to do initially, Nick, is discover a little bit about you. So where do you originate from, Nick?
So the more I talk, the more you're gonna hear it. My French accent. So a little bit of a story about me, right? I come from a region of France that is called Burgundy, a city called Dijon. Usually people know the name, but not where it is.
Yeah.
It is in the east part of France, very much in the countryside. And it is a region known for winemaking.
Okay. So you're a wine connoisseur.
Well, I kind of grew up in a family of winemakers, so I definitely have some knowledge about it, and that very much influenced my decisions and my career and my life in general, which we probably will talk a little bit about later.
Okay. So I'm just thinking, what is the wine selection comparatively like in East London? Any good ones or work to do?
Well, I guess you can get really any wine in London in general, right? You import. I think there's more importation from countries like Chile and Argentina and South Africa and Australia, because the French wines are very expensive.
Okay.
But you can find them as well. It's just not the biggest market, I would say.
Okay. And random question behind you. Are they snowboards?
There are many boards. This is usually a good icebreaker. They've got a kiteboard, a snowboard, and a wakeboard.
Oh wow!
And those are the bags of my kites in my left side. This is my passion, kite surfing.
Okay, amazing. And where? Sorry, this is definitely going off topic, but it's just
that's fine.
Interested. So, and where do you generally do that? Where do you go?
Southeast of England, all around London, 2 hours away, 2 hours 15 maximum drive. You can find a spot to kite. I just went like yesterday for like an hour away. That was great.
Okay, I need to tell my cousin husband and her kids. They're massively into this sort of thing. So I will, if they need any tips, I know that I've got a new connection.
Yeah, definitely. Always happy to welcome new members to the community as well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So Burgundy, born and raised, but
Yeah.
now you're in East London. So what brought you to the UK and the East End of London?
Um, Very much English at the beginning,
Yeah.
wanting to learn English,
Mm.
and career opportunities.
Okay.
But I left London and then I came back for different reasons, which were my friends
Okay.
and also kite surfing, which I discovered in between, which you can do in London very much.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. So clearly when you were here the first time, I guess you enjoyed London and you built up a bit of a network, a bit of some friends along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's it's a big city,
Yeah.
and you can make many friends,
Mm.
many good connections, and it's where I traveled a lot in between.
Yeah.
Lived in North America and Spain as
Oh,
well,
wow. Wow.
and I found that London was always kind of the place where I felt the most
Yeah.
home. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's why I came back.
It must be nice to do that where you get the chance to travel
Mm.
and
Experience different cultures.
yeah, yeah, and then you get that kind of feeling about where feels like home just because
Mm.
you've traveled to different places, potentially had a good time in all those places, but
Yeah.
there's one place that it just feels a little bit more settled, there's a little bit more comfort, there's a little bit
Mm.
more ease.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not really about what the place looks like.
Mm,
It's really a feeling.
yeah,
I can only
yeah,
describe it that way. It's a feeling of, being home. Yeah.
yeah. And that probably links nicely in a random sort of way to work because I think sometimes when we go into the workplace, sometimes we can start a job,
Hmm.
start a career, and with the best intentions, and we all want that feeling from, I guess, the culture,
Yeah.
the energy,
Hmm.
our work colleagues,
Yeah.
and if we get that feeling, then it's like, yeah, okay, I can see myself developing here. But if we don't get that feeling,
Mm.
then it's a little bit confusing, particularly when we're young. And your corporate career, you kind of started, and it didn't quite go the way that you, I
Mm.
guess, wanted to go. Maybe you
Yeah.
could elaborate around
Yeah.
that.
I think just to come back to your point just before,
Okay.
maybe would it be okay to call it a sense of belonging?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
I mean, is that not what everyone is looking for
I
at the
think
end of the
so.
day?
Yeah. I think that's the. I think the thing about work. Maybe you can shed some more light on this. It's easy to start to be in a career,
Hmm.
and because we've got the habit of going to the job, doing that function, even when we're not getting the signs that we want, that sense of belonging. And that sense of belonging, I guess there's various things that fit into that in
Yeah.
terms of what that belonging means. Even if we don't feel sense that, we just stay because we're in that habit, and
Yeah.
maybe our confidence and is a little bit skewed because we've been in a role for, I don't know,
Hmm.
3, 4, 5 years, and the
Uh,
idea, the fear that's involved in terms of maybe putting ourselves away from that can be a little bit strong.
I think there is the mention of. I don't think it's easy to get that sense of belonging.
Yeah.
Well, or rather, I don't think it's very. The probability of feeling that sense of belonging is not very high. I think
Yeah.
I've gone through many companies, and that sense of belonging was quite rare. And it doesn't depend on how much money you get or how interesting your job is. It comes from the relationships that you have with your colleagues
Yeah.
and the environment that is set up by your leader.
Mm.
That is what creates that sense of belonging. And yeah.
I think I've experienced a sense of belonging maybe in a couple of roles where you work with just wonderful people. So within the team, broadly, you've got, and maybe you can speak on this in due course, but broadly within a team, we've got wonderful relationships, wonderful people, people that I can think of maybe two companies where there was a sense of belonging, even if that didn't stretch right across the business within the team that we had, because it was certainly in two occasions, because the teams were so strong, just in terms of friendships that developed.
Yeah. There's a sense that we are all in this together.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And even as I guess, as I mentioned a second ago, even if the broader business wasn't quite on the same page as us, not that there was any particularly conflict, because of the team bond in certain situations was so strong, there was a sense of belonging. Didn't last, but for a period there was.
Well, the bigger the community. So I say community because it's not, if it's your team, say 5 people, and it's easier to get that sense of belonging than if you enlarge it to, the whole company that might be like 100, 150 people, for example, it's harder then. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it's possible. I was thinking actually, maybe you might have some thoughts around this. It's potentially a lot easier, not to say that it's certain, but maybe a little bit easier if somebody's in a position and they're starting their own company, and they can maybe think about culture, think about the type of energy that they want within the business. I'm not an expert in this area, but I would imagine you would have hiccups, you would have mistakes, but I guess I would imagine it's a little bit easier if you are in a process of starting your own venture, and you could you've got a bit of a vantage point on culture.
I think you don't have to create your own business to do that, though. You can be a leader of a department or a team, and think about culture. All it takes is taking the position, the role rather than the position of a leader. And that's all the influence you're going to have.
Well, that's a really good thought and a piece of advice for people that might be listening to this, that might have their own team within a business, and maybe the culture in the company isn't great, but they can make the culture within their team great.
Absolutely. That's their responsibility.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So getting back to you, so back in London. Well, I'm assuming you were back in London or the UK, and your corporate career started. Did you get that sense of belonging?
I did a few times.
Okay.
So let me give you a bit of a summary of how it happened, right? Okay. Maybe that'll kind of shed some light.
Yeah.
I was a software engineer when I started my career.
Okay.
So when I studied software engineering in Dijon, actually, and I worked in Lyon, which is one of the biggest city in France. And I started working corporate, right? I worked for 4 years in total in France before I left. And I left for the UK, for London. I worked 2 more years before realizing that it wasn't really for me. I was just not fulfilled by what I was doing. So, I was a software engineer. Engineering was easy for me. I was very good at it without putting too much of a effort. And so that's why I chose this path. And I really liked innovation as well, and like, gadgets and things like that. But long term, it wasn't fulfilled. I could feel it in my bones that I wasn't, completely fulfilled by my career. And I struggled to actually admit it to myself. That was a really big step, because I just, for me, it was a failure to admit that I didn't choose the right path.
Yeah.
Right. So it took me some time, but then I realized it, and then I went traveling, trying to find my my career, my next career. It obviously didn't work out that way, because you don't think about your career when you travel.
Yeah.
But it helped me open my mind enough that I could then find something, right? And what I realized is that I loved working with people.
Okay.
Right. And helping people. That was one of the main things. But if you want to go back to coaching, why coaching? Because I believe very strongly that when you want to change, coaching is the most sustainable way of making change happen.
Yeah.
Right. Why? Because in coaching, the person that is being coached is the one designing their solution, and adopting that. You can't, there's no better way to adopt a solution than when it comes from you. Right. That's what coaching does.
Is it randomly in a different sort of way, a different type of engineering, in that there's a creative element there where you're able to connect with somebody, work out what they've said to you, and maybe some of the things that they've been doing previously, and support them based on what you know about them, their energy.
In a way, but I would say my job, it's an interesting question, actually. I think if I would put it to engineering, my job is to enable people's engineering mind.
I like that.
Right? Because we're not all engineers. We don't all think as engineers. I have an engineer.
I'd love to be an engineer. Or have the ability to be an engineer.
Yeah, but I have an engineer mind. I find plenty of ideas and solutions to things that I don't really need. It's like this. It works like this, right? But what I do is not everyone is like this, and so I enable people to turn on their engineering mind for their own purpose, for their own lives, for their own, they want to live a great life. They want to make the changes that will make their life more fulfilling. Then I enable them to find those solutions, right? That's my job.
Is it interesting when you start working with a client, and I don't know typically if there's a certain phase that they're in when you start working with them, but essentially when you start working with them and they're maybe a little bit confused, a little bit frustrated, a little bit stressed, and you're able to maybe, I don't know, engage awareness, engage maybe more focus, a better perspective. What's that process like for you, where you start to kind of engage them?
There's a lot of so self-awareness, right? How do you get self-awareness? I'm a mirror to them. That's how I say it, right? Okay. I'm just mirroring what they are, what they're saying to them. And I'm just observing. Oh, this is the way I observe. What is it? What's happening here, right? And that kind of triggers their introspective kind of mind, right? The more you do it, the more self-aware they are, the more awareness they get, right? And they get used to it. It's a muscle. Self-awareness is a muscle. We don't, if we haven't trained it. I've been working on it for the past 10 years, so I wouldn't say mine is very good, but it's probably better than some people. It's a muscle, so start working on it, and after a few sessions, people realize how much of a positive effect it has.
So just around that, when you say self-awareness, is it that ability to recognize, I don't know, how we're feeling in a moment, or something that's happened in a moment.
Yeah.
What maybe you can explain what self-awareness means to you.
Yeah. Self-awareness is, I mean, I can give you an example. Maybe that'd be
Right.
probably self-explanatory, right? You can have some negative self-talk, right? Telling yourself that you're not good enough, you don't have the skills, you know, you don't have the experience, etc., etc. That's self-talk. Being aware of that self-talk is a second thing, right? People are not always aware, and
okay,
and that's one thing, right? That's for example an example of something you want to be aware of is the negative self-talk that you're having, so that it doesn't, because humans, we all have negative self-talk, we all do, right? But being aware of it makes the difference between it controlling you and you controlling it.
Okay.
Right? And it's the same thing for emotions. How I feel at the moment. Do I feel sad? Do I feel frustrated? Do I feel angry? Do I feel excited? All those emotions, you want to be aware of them. You want to know what's happening in you, right? Not because you want to, if you're angry, fine, you're angry. You have absolute right to be angry. Be aware of it, though.
Yeah. So when we're aware, so if we can use the kind of maybe the negative self-talk, if we think that we're not good enough at doing something, or we don't think positively of us, when we have those moments when we're aware, when you're working with your clients or indeed yourself, are there tools that we can put in place that can give us maybe more perspective, and to say that's just a thought that isn't actually true?
Yeah, there's a very good tool that actually I use in coaching. Well, with negative self-talk, let's say, you can just ask yourself, is it really true? Is it really, really true? Right? That's one question. Usually, when I ask the question, people kind of think, oh, actually, what is the other question you can ask is, what is the opposite of that? Right? That's a very good question. Usually that makes people realize that actually, what they've been telling themselves.
So, okay, wonderful. So in that moment, when we have self-awareness, we can give ourselves that moment to actually think, because most of us will embrace the negative thought and won't even think about challenging it, and it will impact us for maybe the next interaction, whether particularly if we're in the workplace, or we've got another meeting to attend, or we've bumped into a colleague in the canteen, and maybe we're in that negative self-talk mode.
Yeah. If we're not self-aware, I think that's where you're leading with the question, right? How do you do when you're not self-aware? Well, first of all, you're not self-aware in the moment, but you know of yourself as a person that has negative self-talk, right? You're just not aware of it in the moment, or you know that it exists at least. Well, check your reality, right? If you know that you're that kind of person, then check your reality. Ask some friends or colleagues and say like, oh, this is what I'm thinking at the moment, or is it like, challenge it, right?
Yeah. Okay, cool. So I just wanted to go back a tad. So when you went away traveling, came back, and ultimately decided, I like work, I like people, working with people. What was your process around that? That doesn't have to be a process, but was there just like that eureka moment? You thought, well, I just like being around people, or supporting people.
Well, it's I feel it nowadays when I coach clients, and that feeling of fulfillment when people progress, they realize something, they have an insight, or they make a step forward. When I see them doing that, like even right now when I talk, it brings emotions in me.
Yeah.
That's fulfillment, right? I didn't know that then, but I knew that there was something there, which I explored, right? I've been coaching for about 5 years now, different type of coaching. I was first I started in change management. And teams who wanted to change the way they worked. So, and there was a bit of leadership in there as well. Because obviously when a team wants to change, then there's a need of change in the leadership type as well. Then I did that for a few years, and then I did growth, career development, career growth, right? People that wanted to reach goals and just wanted coaching around that, right? Which is coaching still, but for a different type of topic, right? But over time there was coaching. There were people progressing, people getting, moving forward, which is what I'm, at the end fulfilled by. I find this really rewarding.
Yeah. No, it totally makes sense to me, seeing people advance. And yeah, because I do think I think you alluded to it when we started talking about how important coaching is, because I think it's very easy I think coaches can get us to ask ourselves questions that we wouldn't even think of asking ourselves. And they can open up ideas and thoughts that either we may have never considered, or if we do consider, we consider them in like really minute milliseconds, and we discard them.
Yeah.
And we don't engage them. And nothing ever changes. So when you've got good coaches, they can really get the best out of us that we potentially wouldn't even consider as possible.
And then there's a dimension that is very important in what you're saying is we normally we might discard them. What makes it different with a coach is a good coach will give the space for that idea, for that reflection to happen. The coach creates the environment for it, creates the space, right? That's important.
Yeah, totally. So we want to talk a little bit about businesses and how, I guess, difficult relationships, conflict in business, how that can impact businesses, whether it be a department. I guess if it impacts a department or department, there's going to be a ripple effect, a negative ripple effect across every dynamic, whether it be team interaction, team performance, morale, etc. So if you can maybe in your I guess words and your ideas, what are the consequences of, I guess, a conflict in business, and maybe you've got some ideas about how they can be mitigated.
Yeah. So I mean, there's so much to talk about in this area. To just introduce that, I think I'm gonna steal something from one of the most inspiring person for me, at least, Simon Sinek, who talks about the circle of safety. Have you heard of it?
Better to say I haven't.
Okay. So it's very simple, right? A circle of safety is what surrounds people, right? And from outside of this circle of safety comes the pressure. So imagine if you're a team, that's your circle of safety. From outside comes the pressure of the business, need to make money, the client, problems and things like that, right? If inside that circle, everyone is focused together to solve those problems, then they're very performant, right? They're all in this together to solve those problems. Now, if there are conflicts and the relationships are difficult, then everyone is focused on protecting themselves.
Okay.
So focused on protecting themselves from the internal pressures, right? From your colleague.
Internal within the business?
No, internal of that circle.
Okay.
Right? So everyone is focused on, like, is kind of, you know, that image where everyone is kind of looking at each other like, who's going to attack next?
Yeah.
Kind of thing. If everyone is putting all their energy into protecting themselves against the people that are in the same circle, they can't be performant against the pressure that's coming from outside.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I get it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's if you Google circle safety, it's very well explained. But that's the main explanation. Is in that circle, everyone is, you know, safe and focused on the pressure coming from outside. If they're not, then that's the performance that is hit.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. I'll find a link to that, and I'll leave that on the show notes so people can maybe learn more about that. So, in relation to that, so if there is pressure within a circle and performance clearly is compromised, are there little tools that can be maybe used to resolve or to improve that situation?
Well, that's what's gonna, I mean, the reason why people might be in the state of protecting themselves against, you know, their colleagues next to them, is it's because they don't trust them, right? They don't trust the people around them. So they're like, oh, if I don't trust someone, I'm defensive. I'm like, what is going to happen to me? Then you need to increase that trust. And if you want to increase that trust, you need to improve that relationship.
And is that, so when we talk about trust, so if there's I don't know, say if somebody's listening to this now, watching this, who's I don't know, it might be a manager or manages a team, and they can maybe recognize this, they can think, actually, this sounds awfully like the situation I have at work, where I sense that my circle within my team isn't the cohesive unit that they want and they need. What do? Do they look at themselves? Do they look at maybe certain team members?
Yeah. So part of part of the quality of relationships within a team depends on the culture, the internal culture of that team. If a leader treats the people of the team in a bad way and is not, good at building those relationships, everyone in that team will do the same thing, essentially, right? So part of the responsibility falls on the leader, that's for sure. Then another part of the responsibility falls on the people themselves.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have one person that is not very good at building relationships. And like, I'm going to make a note on that, by the way. We don't have to blame ourselves for not being good at building relationships. We don't learn how to do it. In our education, at least in the Western education, I come from France, but I've got good knowledge of how the UK works as well. We don't learn how to build relationships. We do it organically. We don't do it intentionally.
Okay.
Right. And so we only learn, like, when we grow older, that there are things that need to be done. Right. So we shouldn't blame ourselves. This is the way that we learn. So, but we can change it. Right. So someone that is not good at building relationships might affect the rest of the team. The responsibility of a leader, if that's what you were asking, is to increase that awareness to that person, one of many people, and potentially coach them to get better at it, right? Give feedback, give not advices, but coaching in terms of how to improve that, right? If I tell I used to be a team leader, if I tell my teammate that it's challenging for other people to communicate with them for very specific reasons, and you need to be specific, then your goal for the year is to improve those things, improve your communication, for example, right? And then you help them do that, give them feedback and help them do that.
So to speak to what you do as a coach, I'm just thinking that there are many managers or leaders that potentially don't have those skill sets to actually coach, and maybe just because they haven't been trained, it's not something that comes easily to them. They feel a little bit awkward around it. So is that when businesses should be looking at people like you that can come in and help them with the challenges they've got, because and then they can focus on other areas that they're more adept at dealing with?
Yeah. The coaching, there's one element that is very important for coaching to work, is the awareness of a problem.
Okay, yeah.
Right? I mean, this is obvious, right? Someone has to be aware that there is a problem to be able to work with a coach.
But very often they're not. I've worked in companies where an acknowledgement of a problem existing.
So some people I work with, they got feedback, negative feedback, or constructive feedback, should we call it, about things that they want to improve. And one of those things are building relationship with their colleagues or stakeholders or or people around them, and they want to improve at that, and they calling a coach to do that, right? Absolutely.
Yeah.
If a manager is not able to do it, then they can call the coach, like me.
Well, I've definitely been in companies where the idea of coaching to some leaders or people in leadership positions it feels really awkward to them, and maybe something that I guess they feel or felt wasn't part of their job description. And the idea of to have to maybe coach and nurture, I guess there should be an element of nurturing, but I think for some leaders it doesn't come naturally. And I think if you're bad at it, it's really, and maybe to go back to what you said earlier about being self-aware, sometimes leaders can try and coach, do a bad job, but they're maybe not even maybe they don't even have that self-awareness that they're doing a bad job. So they're delivering, the energies, the message is poor, the energy around the message is poor, and ultimately you're not going to get the desired effect, because invariably your team members that you're coaching will pick that up, feels a little bit ingenuous. They would go along with it because it's maybe they have to, but in terms of yielding the results that both parties want, it's going to be a fail.
Yeah. I've had managers with great coaching skills, natural great coaching skills, and I've had managers who trained. But either way, it is true. The role of a manager, I mean, if we want to keep our people in a business, if we want our business to grow, we need our staff to grow.
Yeah.
Right. And that's, coming back to what I said earlier, the best way, most sustainable way of growing is through coaching. Managers can do it. It is essentially part of their role. They need to learn how to do it. But it's definitely something that should be part of any company.
Okay. So something that we spoke about briefly, but I think before we hit the record button, I think something that you might, I don't know if it's part of your programs that you offer. We spoke about 10 habits of
Yes.
successful relationships. And I guess I'm thinking about how some of those, I guess you can tell me about how it works and
Yeah.
so forth. But I would imagine that some of those habits can be utilized, particularly when there's conflict. I'll let you answer now.
Yeah. So first, I should introduce that with the fact that through all the coaching that I've done, the different themes that I've worked with, the one that calls to my heart the most is relationships, in a global term. So relationships in a personal and professional context, right? So building relationship is part of being a good leader. It's also part of being a good parent or a good friend, etc., right? And that's my goal. Then people often come to me saying that they're struggling to build a relationship where they feel supported, and fulfilled, and relaxed, etc. Some people also come with the fact that they struggle to build their boundaries and make them respected. That's part of a relationship. For example, if you have a group of friends and you get disrespected all the time and you suffer from it, but you just struggle to kind of stand up for yourself, right? So they come with different problems, and what I say is that I've built a way to recognize what there is to work on when it comes to relationships. So if you want successful relationships, I've built those 10 habits for people to kind of refer themselves to, in order to know, oh, this is the part that I need the most. This is the part that I need the most. This I mastered already, right? Or I'm at a good level because there's no real mastery in it. So the 10 habits, I'm not going to list them all because they are available on my website, but they split in 3 different groups. The first is about emotional intelligence. So there's self-awareness and self-management. So self-awareness, we've talked about it, right? In the second group, it's all about the mindset with which you approach your relationships, right? So if I say something like assertiveness, making your boundaries respected, setting them up and making them respected, right? And having the confidence to do so. There's another one that's going to be transparency. For example, how to make sure that you're actually being transparent with the people that you had that relationship with. You're being clear about your intentions, what you're trying to get from, etc. Transparency is very important to build trust. Vulnerability is another one, right? Tell people what are you feeling at the moment and what you're struggling with, right? Why? Because people will empathize when they understand you better. And when they empathize, they will want to help you. Automatically, that's a human thing, right? The more they understand your struggles, the more they will want to help you if they can, right? Curiosity, and coming to any conversation, trying to understand rather than trying to convince, right? That's curiosity. That's very much needed in any relationship, etc. So that's the mindset. That's part of the mindset, right? And the third one is those are specific actions, right? how to have a difficult conversation is one. How to give feedback, how to challenge a relationship, right? Those are specific actions. So if you take difficult conversation, how do you approach a difficult conversation? So then you can use a framework, right? How to get feedback. There's the one that same thing. I think it was inspired from Bob Chapman, FBI, which is feeling, behavior, impact, right? So you use that as a framework to give feedback or even have a difficult conversation.
Yeah.
Right. So all that is kind of areas which you may want to work on. And you don't want to work on them all of them at the same time. It's going to be overwhelming. But there may be some that you want to work on before others. Right?
So if you're coaching a client and you want to take them through the 10 habits, how do you isolate an area of focus for a client?
Yeah. So I first of all, I give them that, and then I tell them I ask them which ones are the ones that you struggle the most with, right? Or some people say I struggle the most with vulnerability. I just don't know how to be vulnerable with others. Or it can be self-management. I get overwhelmed by my emotions or by my goals, and then I forget everything that's happening around me. So that's self-management, right?
Okay.
And so like they just pick one, and then we work on those. Yeah.
Okay. So we're getting towards the end now, but just make a couple of questions if I may. So around, again, for people listening and watching, that maybe they're seeing within their business, they're seeing some conflict and they're keen maybe to get a handle on where it might be coming from, or maybe how to approach it. So would you have any words of advice for any leaders that are watching now that feel that things aren't quite right? There's some conflict, but they're really keen to maybe work out how to resolve it. And that might be tackle it themselves. It might be, actually, I don't have the expertise. Can I come to somebody like you?
Yeah.
What sort of advice would you have?
Well, first of all, there's one thing that I usually say. Conflict is a symptom of a relationship not being at its best quality, right? If you have a trusting and supportive relationship, any conflict would be very easy to solve.
Okay.
Right? So when as a leader, you see that there are conflicts and they're painful, especially they're painful, then there's a relationship issue.
Okay.
Right? So that answers your first question.
Yeah.
Then how do you deal with this? Is your goal as a leader is, your responsibility is that inside that circle of safety, everyone is focused on the outside, right? So then that's your goal, that's your responsibility. So then you give feedback and you give the right support to your people so that happens. And that may be support of a coach, or that may be different training like communication, leadership, whichever. But yeah, that's your responsibility.
Okay. Do you ever have scenarios where you would get a leader and they might be really keen to evolve as a leader and improve as a leader and manage their team? So could they come to someone like you and say, just been promoted, or
or want to be,
I've been given new KPIs or objectives around team support, but I've got no idea where to start. What I'd be keen to do is to talk to you and to get a handle on where do I start and how do I achieve this and become great at it.
Yeah. First of all, I would want to to highlight, to understand what is this leader's understanding of relationships, or what good relationships are, right? Because if the leader doesn't understand what a good relationship is, then they're gonna fail to make it happen inside their team, right? So that's the first thing, I think. Then there is, we talk about symptoms. The first one is disruption, right? When it comes down to delivery, I've worked quite a lot in delivery, so that's very easy. If something is not delivered and you see that it's because people just didn't get along or miscommunicate and didn't feel like there was an ownership of the problem, then you are in. That's a symptom, right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? I'm not sure that answers your question.
No, it does. It does. But it raises another question I have in my head, actually. So lots of companies talk about values. These are our company values. And definitely, I think that I've probably worked in companies where the team values are kind of something that is pinned on the wall, but in reality, they're not really adhered to. So is there a correlation between maybe slightly confused, I guess, company values and conflict, because maybe they're outdated, or maybe they're just kind of like almost a tick box exercise to say these are our values?
I'm gonna quote another person that I really like. Actually, that's one of the people. We'll talk about it later. Paulo Coelho. I don't know if you've heard of him.
No, I don't know. I'm not familiar. No.
Wrote The Alchemist, one of his most well-known book. But he says one thing is you change the world through your actions, not your opinion.
Okay. Yeah.
Values on a wall, they're opinions.
Yeah.
Okay. If you want your values to be impregnated, that's going to be in your behavior. Right? So as a leader, your responsibility is to, in every action, every behavior you display in the company, you need to show those values. And then it's also to make sure that you direct the people that you lead directly, they do so as well.
Okay.
And if you witness that they don't, it's your responsibility to catch it and to correct it, right? And then those people, their responsibility is to do the same for themselves and for the people they lead.
Okay.
And it goes down the hierarchy like this, or if it's not a hierarchy, it's a leadership. It goes down like this until, the values are very much impregnated everywhere in the company.
I love your answer, by the way. And I think every leader that listens to that should maybe, write that down, and maybe get The Alchemist. And if they haven't read that, maybe get that. So Nick, how can people find you if they want to work with you, find out more about you? What's the best way for people to engage you?
Yeah, it's through my website. So you may put the link in the episode, but it's nicholasrion.com. You can contact me through the website. There's my email and there my number as well. There's also the document that is given for free of the 10 habits of successful relationships, obviously, which is the link is nicholasrion.com/10 habits. And you can download it and have a look yourself, right?
Okay, fabulous, amazing. And I'm imagining when you work with clients, you've got the gift that you can maybe talk in French and English, so you can be a French client, an English client.
I have both. I also speak Spanish, but I don't coach in Spanish. It's a bit more complicated.
Really? I'm so jealous. I'm thinking about learning Spanish. So, did you learn that early on?
No, I actually learned very late. I learned by myself, and then I lived in
Really?
Spain, as I explained. So,
How'd you learn it? So I'm going off piece. How'd you learn it by yourself? Was it books? Was it
it's a
audio
very
stuff?
the most simple way. So very quickly, grammar book, page one, you go. So you read, and then you do the exercises, and then I did. Then I started reading. I'm a fan of books. I read a lot.
Okay.
And so I started reading in Spanish. My friends were making fun of me because I read some fantasy in Spanish.
Yeah.
And then once I get that really well, I can read quickly. I watched TV shows and films subtitled in Spanish until I could remove the subtitles, right? Wow. And that's how I learned Spanish.
So just to go back to the start, so was it books initially?
It's the grammar book first.
Grammar books.
Grammar book first. Understand the grammar. I'm very thorough when I learn something.
That engineering side of you.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Okay. So I learned the grammar first, which is not very different from French. So it was pretty straightforward.
For me, it might be more of a challenge, but not insurmountable.
No, yeah, it's pretty close. Okay. And then after that, starting reading like novels and
that's incredible. We're ending in a second, but what was sort of the bandwidth? What was the timeline?
It was over a year, I think.
That's incredible. That's really quick.
And then, I mean, I could speak Spanish I could understand Spanish. I could write it. I could understand it also, like spoken, but speaking was a bit more difficult because then you need to learn how to speak, right? Even though you understand it, it needs to come up fluently. And to do that, you've got only one way. You need to speak. So when I went to Spain, I lived in Spain for 5 months. I was speaking Spanish, and then I spent some time in Latin America as well.
Okay.
So same thing.
Okay, lovely. Okay, so this we could siphon this piece off as another episode.
Yeah, absolutely. How
to learn Spanish. Nick, it's been wonderful meeting you, connecting with you. I love the insights and all the tools that you've brought to me and to everybody listening. So thank you for sharing all those. Hopefully we can have more conversations along the line. And but thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much for having me. It was a great conversation. I had a lot of fun.
Okay, lovely. Okay, well, thank you everybody for tuning into this episode of My Perfect Failure. We're always looking to grow the show, so please do share this episode far and wide, particularly if you know people that are looking to improve team harmony, team dynamics within their business. Maybe they felt a little bit of conflict. This will be a perfect episode for them. And your feedback is most welcome. We're always keen to hear about the things you like and equally the things you don't like. So you can find me at paul@myperfectfailure.com, or you can find me via the feedback page on the website. So take care for now. Bye.
Thanks for listening to My Perfect Failure podcast. Be sure to visit www.myperfectfailure.com to join the conversation. Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or Google Play. Look out for our next episode.